Welcome to Course Grinder's second C++ tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at how we can design a program that uses variables, and we can see how variables are used in the C++ language. I'm a firm believer that repetition is important for learning, so I'm always going to start each video off with a blank slate, and we're going to actually write those first few lines. I know the preprocessor commands, they're going to get old, but I want to make sure they are drilled inside your mind so you don't forget them, because you got to do them all the time. So we'll start off with a number sign or a hashtag, include, and in triangle braces IOStream. Using namespace std, I'll put a semicolon. Like I said before, it doesn't matter how many spaces you put here. It really doesn't matter as long as you have all this defined before your main. Speaking of main, we're going to get there next. Remember, we are going to be returning a value of 0, which will indicate when our main function has completed its task, so it can stop. So we're going to define our data type as an integer, int, because 0 is an integer. There's no decimals places. We're going to name our function. We're going to name it main. Normally, I'll let you name your functions whatever you want, but not for the main. You got to keep it named main. You're going to put some empty brackets. We're going to open up a curly brace, and then you can close it. My program Xcode automatically closes it for me when I press enter. So you can see that everything in the space between these two curly braces, this one over here and this one down here, all of that will be part of the main function. And we're going to close it off with the return 0 semicolon. Once again, not always needed, but we're going to do it anyway, just in case there's someone out there who needs to put that return. Once they get to the 0, remember we're looking for an integer, so it sees that we have an integer and it knows that it's time to stop. So what are variables? Variables are going to be placeholders. Variables will allow you to substitute even a line of text or a certain number or some numbers for variables. And a variable can be whatever you want. From math, we know that x and y are the most common variables, but we can name absolutely anything we want a variable. It could be a word, you can keep it to a letter, but you might run out of letters. You might want to put 2 letters or 3 letters. It really doesn't matter. So we're going to start off by just looking through a few things to see exactly how we define our variables and how it works, right? Just want to actually see it happening. I think that's the best way to learn. So we can start off by writing int, because we need to still define what type of memory we are going to be using for our variables, because you can have some variables that are going to be with decimal places, and that's going to obviously require more memory to be saved because it needs to be more precise. Or you can have integers which are going to be less precise because you're just going to have a whole number. So we'll start off with an integer, and we can start off really simple, integer x. You write int, you put a space, and then you put which variable you want, and then you put what you want it to equal to, so we can put it equal to 5. And we're going to end that line off with a semicolon. Now we're doing this outside of the main. It could also be done inside the main, but for this video, we're going to just be writing it right up here. So now, whenever we use the letter x just free floating inside of our code, it's going to correspond to the number 5. If you don't believe me, let's take a look. Let's apply what we learned last video. We know that if we write cout, which we're permitted to use because we've told the program to look at it in a certain way by using these codes up here in the preprocessor commands and the namespace definition, we're going to put our 2 triangle braces, and we're going to put x. Now remember, before in the last video, we were putting quotation marks because we wanted to actually have the letter x. So what if we actually did x with the quotation marks? You would actually get the letter x. Let's just take a look at that right now in case anyone was wondering. We're going to press build and run here, and we're actually going to see that we're going to print out the letter x right here. Well, that's not what we wanted. We wanted the variable x. So don't get confused by putting quotation marks around variables. You never want to do that unless you actually wanted that variable x to be printed out. So now we have the variable x acting there. Let's go and print out and see. We should get the number 5 down here, and we get exactly that, the number 5. And you can make it even more complicated. It does not need to be reserved to a letter. We can write, I don't know, what's a word we want to write? We're going to write the word lemming. So the variable is now the entire word lemming. We're going to put the variable lemming down here, and we should see that when we print, let's change the number so we just see it actually working. And we're going to see, do we get a 9 down here? And yeah, we get a 9, which is pretty awesome. Now, you can even make it more complicated. You can have variables interacting with each other, and you can make them add each other up and everything. So let's take a look at that. Let's go back down to the simple letter. We're going to go to x. We'll define that as 1. Integer y, we're going to define that as 2. So you see how we're always going to be ending these lines off with a semicolon. For the most part, unless you don't see a semicolon, you're going to be putting a semicolon. There are a few exceptions that I'm going to be explaining and pointing out when we get there, but for the most part, you're going to want to keep those semicolons there. So we know that integer x is equal to 1 and integer y is equal to 2, but you can also make integers equal to other integers or sums of other integers. So let's go and integer of sum, for example, right? Because sum is when you add things together. We'll put x plus y, and we'll end that line. Now, this means that whenever you use the integer sum, it's going to be x plus y, and both of those are two integers, which you can replace with 1 plus 2. Now let's see if we actually get the value of 3, which will be the sum when we print out the variable sum. We see down here, exactly as we expected, we get the number 3. So that was just a brief overview of how integers work. You always need to define which data type you're using. The first time you mention the integer, you don't need to go down here and define it as an integer again, because the system is pretty smart and actually knows that you already defined it as an integer. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below and I'll answer them as soon as possible. And make sure you subscribe if you would like more C++ tutorials. Goodbye.